Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing what's probably known as the most popular argument for the Trinity in the Old Testament, and this is the angel of the Lord. The Christian method of the Bible when dealing with this argument is to pretty much take any and every instance in which a messenger of God speaks or is spoken to as God and claim that this is evidence for his divinity. To begin with, let's deal with the main claim of this argument, and this is that the angel speaks as if he is God. A typical Christian example will be with the instance in which we find the angel appearing to Hagar and then claiming that he would multiply his seed. Christians will assert that since the angel is claiming that he will multiply Hagar's seed, the angel must be God himself. Christians will argue that when a prophet delivers a message, he will mark a distinction between himself and God, likely saying, "Thus says God," or "So says God." But this angel doesn't do so, signifying that he must be God as he is different from all other messengers. The issue with the Trinitarian position is that they are assuming that the role of an angel is to function like that of a prophet. When a prophet receives a message from God, whether in a dream or in a vision, he delivers it by saying, "God has said to me," or "Thus says God," meaning he is repeating what has already been spoken to him. It is therefore the practice of a prophet to state this before he begins. Angels, on the other hand, are not commanded what to say. They just appear and say God's words directly. This is because prophets speak after having received the message, whereas angels speak while God is actively speaking through them, since it is the case that the angel is merely relaying the words of God through himself. It is unnecessary for the angel to begin by saying, "Thus says God." Whereas the prophet, on the other hand, is not merely relaying the message through himself, but rather from himself. In other words, a prophet is delivered to, an angel is delivered through. Now that we have clarified that it is necessary for a prophet to say "So says God" when repeating a message onto the people, but unnecessary for when the angel is being spoken through, we can move on. The next example which Christian missionaries appeal to is when angels are addressed as God. They will argue that since the angel is referred to and addressed as God, it must necessitate that he was being recognized as God. This linguistic convention of referring to a messenger as if they are their master is often found in the Bible. See Judges 11:13. In this instance, the king speaks unto the messengers, telling them, "Restore the land peacefully." It is obvious that a mere messenger of a king would not have such power over the land to restore it and hand it over. This would clearly belong in the hands of the leader Yiftach. Yet the king of Ammon still chooses to address the messengers as if they are the sender, telling them to restore the land peacefully over again. An argument I often hear in response to this concept is that God will not give his glory unto another, per Isaiah 42, and therefore when people speak unto the angel as if he is God, he truly therefore must be God. This is true, and we recognize that one may not give the divine glory unto any other deity besides God. This is designated to him alone. When the messenger speaks as his master, and one responds to him as if he is their master, no divine glory is attributed to the messenger. The messenger is recognized as distinct from the sender. It is simply just a matter of linguistic convention. The same way I may speak to King David's servants as if they are him, while recognizing that they do not possess the power or authority that he does. The last point to clarify is why angels are referred to by God's name. God sends forth intermediaries as representatives of him, such as angels, prophets, and holy items. These entities serve as divine extension of God's will and God's presence within creation. This is why we find examples of these entities being ascribed God's divine titles. As I will now demonstrate, the mere attribution of a divine name is insufficient to qualify it as God. In this instance, the prophet Joshua publicly calls the Ark of the Covenant Adon Kol Haaretz, which translates as Lord of all the earth. There are many lords, but only a singular Lord of all the earth. A similar statement is made by King David regarding also the Ark of the Covenant, where he publicly calls it Elohei Yisrael, literally translating as the God of Israel. Elohim is not unique to God, but Elohei over Israel is unique to God. As we have now established, the mere attribution of a divine name or being referred to as the master or ruler over Israel or over the land of Israel is insufficient to qualify one as God. In this last instance, God sends forth the prophet Isaiah to deliver a message unto King Ahaz. the speaker interchangeably switches between Isaiah to the Tetragrammaton. Instead of by verse 10 scripture saying, "Then God spoke to Achaz," it states, "The Tetragrammaton continued speaking to Achaz." However, the only speaker until now had been the prophet Isaiah. This forces the speaker in verse 10, the Tetragrammaton, to be identified as the same speaker until now. In conclusion, the Tetragrammaton in verse 10 must be in reference to the speaker until now, the prophet Isaiah. Let's now look to some of the more common Christian proof texts. In this instance, the term Elohim may be applied to an angel to establish that Jacob didn't wrestle with God, but with rather a divine entity. It is not a dispute directly on interpretation, but rather a dispute on the correct translation, which can lead to the multiple different interpretations. See Psalms 8, where the term Elohim is rendered as angels. This view is affirmed amongst the Church Fathers and the translators of the Septuagint. As established, Christians have no basis outside of their own presupposition to affirm each of these terms as only meaning God. We may therefore translate the term Elohim in Genesis as alluding to Jacob wrestling an angel. The account of the visit to Abraham by the three angels is by far one of the most popular proof texts cited by Christian missionaries. I will explain the chapter in accordance with the view of the Rashbam, due to the simplicity of his interpretation. The Tetragrammaton appeared to him by the grass of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent as the day grew hot. As already demonstrated from Isaiah chapter 7, verse 10, we find God's divine name, the Tetragrammaton, being used in reference to his messenger Isaiah. In this instance, the divine name would obviously be awarded to the angels of God, who are described as men in the very next verse. He lifted up his eyes, and behold, he saw 3 men standing before him. Seeing this, he ran from before the entrance of the tent to greet them, bowing down to the ground. As Abraham notices the 3 men, he proceeds to prostrate before them. This should not be understood as worship, but honor. See 2 Samuel chapter 9 verse 5, where David's servant comes before him and throws himself down to the ground. He said, "My lords, if it pleases you, do not go on past your servant." Abraham uses the plural form lords in reference to all 3 angels standing before him. By verse 22, we see the men depart. The men departed from there towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Tetragrammaton. Regarding the departure of the 2 angels, the verse states that the men went towards Sodom, but Abraham still remained standing before a Tetragrammaton. This Tetragrammaton is the 3rd angel, who had not yet departed along with the other 2. By verse 33, we see this final angel depart, and the Tetragrammaton left, after he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. The 3rd angel, under the name of the Tetragrammaton, departed once he had finished speaking with Abraham. In conclusion, we can establish that all the claims the Christian missionary makes to try and substantiate the angel of the Lord as God, either due to the fact that he speaks as God, he's spoken to as God, or he's referred to as God, are all inconclusive and insufficient to qualify anyone or anything as God. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave any comments or questions below.